Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. As Pierre presented, I'm the GSPC National Focal Point for France, and I'm co-chair of the Global Partnership for Plant Conservation. And I was asked to give an overview of my personal involvement with the promotion of the GSPC. So I'm going to go through a lot of events that have conducted to the current proposal at Substar 25 4.5. Okay, so the establishment of the global strategy for plant conservation, it was launched through the support of a Gran Canaria group, of which represented members that worked in botanical institutions worldwide and were seeing the problems created by climate change on plants. And there was a Gran Canaria declaration, which led to a decision at COP5 to consider the launch of a specific strategy for plants. This was launched at COP6, and it marked the first adoption of targets for plant conservation by the international community. In 2009, there was a first review of progress for the strategy to 10. And in 2010, at COP10 in Japan, the GSPC was updated for the new framework 2011-2020. But the decision of the COP was that the implementation would be pursued as part of the broader strategic plan for biodiversity and the Aichi targets. What has this GSPC helped implement? It has mobilized the plant conservation community worldwide. A number of national responses were developed, as you may see in the little pictures below, in South Africa, in Mexico, in China, and in Europe, for example, among others. And these national strategies included quite a number of mega diverse countries. The framework for action was had smart targets, which were clear, easily understood, quantifiable. There were really a strong guide for national network to implement their own strategy, but there was a flexibility to consider the difficulty in some countries for implementation. It really stimulated action, both at global level and national level, and the key players were botanic gardens and arboreta. In 2004, there was the creation by the CBD of a global partnership for plant conservation. And this global partnership assembled or about 70 national and international partners worldwide. They are included in what is called the flexible coordination mechanism. It's a mechanism that I will explain in my next slide. There was a conference in South Africa and a liaison group meeting in 2018, which were quite decisive in proposing the action plans that we are proposing this time. And at COP15, there was a request to assist that the Global Partnership for Plant Conservation assist in updating the post-2020 period. So the liaison group on the global strategy for plant conservation, it was established in 2004, and it's a mechanism that was created to, at the suggestion of the Secretariat, to help facilitate and promote implementation and monitoring at all levels. This liaison group comprises experts in the fields, the different fields, national GSPC focal points, the representative of the Global Partnership for Plant Conservation, and the CBD Secretariat. So as I mentioned earlier, the last meeting was convened in 2018 in South Africa. The national focal point for the GSPC were decided at COP7, and countries and parties were encouraged to nominate and to designate a focal point for the GSPC. As you see on the right-hand side, you have a link to the current national focal point, and they are by no means in every country. I think there are about 52 national focal points for the GSPC. The Global Partnership for Plant Conservation was also very active with the help of the association, the Association of Botanic Garden, called BGCI, to develop a GSPC toolkit at the request of the Secretariat and the COP. And this toolkit assemble all the documents related to the GSPC, but also we were able to introduce a lot of case studies to help in implementation. We received a lot of support from the Secretariat. We were able to publish the progress in 2009 and in 2020 of the different, the 2 stages of the strategy. We got support also to publish an InfDoc, and you may have seen that for this substar we have just published an information document, which is an important publication that comes as a complement to the proposed action plan. They were national reports that were for the strategic plan for biodiversity that were requested by the Secretariat. And in the 6th national report, there was a 5th point, which was not compulsory, but which related to reporting on the different targets of the GSPC. I want to highlight also the role of the consortium of scientific partners to the CBD that come as a supporting group to the Secretariat of the GSPC to get partner support for any items presented during the Substein COP. And the Secretariat is also very supportive of side events that we organized during Substar COP meetings. Just to conclude, I would like to just say that this time for the 3rd phase, we won't have a separate global strategy for plant conservation, but we have developed an update to this strategy by proposing a set of complementary action in plant conservation in support to the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. We want to, we are very eager to carry on building on the 3 decades of involvement and achievements of worldwide organization in plant conservation to safeguard the world's plant diversity. And if you are interested in joining the Global Partnership for Plant Conservation, if you endorse the objectives of this partnership and its working practices, you are really welcome to join us. There are, as I mentioned, 70 organizations so far. Some are national organizations, but some have a global remit. you have a list which is accessible with this link, and please do contact us. And with this, I want to thank you for your attention, and I'm ready to answer questions if you wish now. Okay, to leave the floor to Pierre.
Thank you very much, Maite, for this presentation. I don't know if anyone has an immediate question. If not, I'm proposing to let Mr. Hendrik Segers, National Focal Point for CBD, National Focal Point for Belgium, to pursue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pierre, and I hope you all hear me well. I'll try to share a presentation, so bear with me if it goes wrong. We know how team sometimes does odd things.
Yeah.
So I'm trying. So in principle,
well.
You should now see the presentation. Does it work?
Yeah, it works. Perfect.
Good. So I've been asked to give you a short outline of the duties and tasks of a national focal point for the CBD and national focal for Substar, which are basically not the same. So I'll try to be brief. And the first thing is that the terms of reference for a national focal point for the CBD is quite well defined. It's defined in decision 8/5 of the CBD. So decision by the 8th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. And in that, it recognizes that parties have specific responsibilities that they give to their national focal points. So the most important functions of a national focal point for the CBD are actually to liaise between the national authorities and the CBD Secretariat. And that can take several forms. So if the CBD Secretariat sends out information to parties of the convention, it has to know where to send this information, and that for that it has these national focal points. And that's the main thing. The second is that parties have to be represented at meetings of the convention. These can be COP meetings, these can be Substar meetings, these can be SBI meetings, they can be all sorts of ad hoc technical expert group meetings and others. And for that, it is the task of a national focal point to identify experts or representatives and to inform the Secretariat in due ways of those of which people will be represented at the meetings, so informing them of the delegations. Again, identifying experts is one of the main things for the ad hoc technical expert groups and for the assessment processes. I'll come back on that later, because this is in many cases something that is being done mostly by the Substar national focal points. There may be other requests for input by parties from the Conference of the Parties and the Secretariat, and very important as well, to collaborate with national focal points in other countries to facilitate the implementation of the convention and to ensure that the national implementation of the convention is being reported upon correctly to the Secretariat and to the Conference of the Parties. Now, the national focal point for the subsidiary body on scientific, technical and technological affairs is slightly different because it is more technical and scientific responsibilities. Here again, the most important thing, as for any national focal point related to the convention, is to facilitate exchange of information between the Substar in this case and the relevant authorities in the country, in the party country where the national focal point is, which is the national focal point is representing, and technical and scientific experts. Here also, same task as the national focal point for the convention itself, is to respond to requests for input from the COP and the Secretariat, but here in this case, mostly related to scientific, technical, and technological issues, and not really readily to political issues. Third main task is communicate and collaborate with focal points of the SBSTA in other countries. And then fourth is to collaborate with other national level focal points of the convention, like the GSPC, which we have just heard, like GTI, like marine and coastal national focal points, and focal points from other biodiversity related conventions, like IPCC, like CMS and others, to facilitate implementation of the convention at the national level. Now, all of this is very theoretical, I readily admit, and I'll try to explain how this really works. Now, the main thing to know about the conference of the working of the convention is that the only decision-making body of the convention is the conference of the parties. That's where everything is decided. There is no other level where decisions are being made. So we have a conference of the parties every 2 years, generally. The period in between we call the intersessional period. Now, it is most during the intersessional periods that we have meetings of subsidiary bodies, ARTECs or others, which prepare documents, prepare recommendations for the conference of the parties, who ultimately takes decisions. Now, what happens is that a COP takes a decision to initiate work. That work can be anything, can be work on scientific, technical affairs, can be work on implementation, whatever. This decision mostly, in general, goes to the executive secretary and the secretariat, who evaluate the request and prepare a communication to the parties, which is called, these are notifications. In the case of the work for scientific and technical issues, this goes to the SBSTA national focal point, who reads the notification, evaluates it, and invites national experts, national representatives to provide input or review from experts, stakeholders, and whatever, collates this input, sends it back to the executive secretary and the secretariat, who collate all the information received by all the national focal points and others as appropriate in a pre-session document for SBSTA meetings, occasionally accompanied by information documents, which goes again to a SBSTA meeting, where the national focal point, the SBSTA national focal point, has ensured that the right delegation is present. And then at the SBSTA meeting, the SBSTA formulates recommendations, not decisions, recommendations that go to COP, and COP will evaluate and discuss and negotiate on these recommendations, and which will ultimately lead to another COP decision. That is, in a nutshell, in very general terms, how things work. Now, if you look at the notification that comes from an executive secretary, there can be another source of information on a specific scientific or technical issue, and that is that the COP may request the executive secretary to initiate a commission study for which a entity is asked to do some work to collate views on a certain number of things. These commission studies mostly go through the SBSTA national focus for review, again to the secretariat, and then lead to pre-session documents and or information documents prior to SBSTA meetings. Now, there's a few complications. That is, first and foremost, there is also the possibility that in many countries, prior to the SBSTA meeting, the SBSTA national focal points coordinate national positions on the pre-session document, so that whoever negotiates at the SBSTA meeting has a position to defend at the SBSTA meeting. Second small complication is that there may be COP decisions that to ask actions immediately from CBD parties on implementation or reporting, and these CBD parties then have to report to the executive secretary, who collates the information that goes to SBSTA national focal points, who collate a review, etc., etc. And that is mostly in the preparation of mostly the global biodiversity outlook. Now, The question which is especially relevant in this particular setting here is where can scientists and experts provide most efficient input? Well, that is at this stages here. Most of the input by experts is relevant in the stage where supranational focal points send out requests from experts to provide input or to review documents that are coming from the Secretariat prior to sub-meetings. This is basically the most efficient way to give in input by experts. Secondly, there is also a possibility, if you have good connections with the supranational focal point or with your national authorities, to provide input in the preparation of national positions prior to sub-meetings. There are many more places or stages in this process where an expert can provide information, but in my experience, these are the most effective and efficient stages where experts can intervene in the process. I hope that this very brief and very succinct overview of the process has helped you a little bit, and I thank you very much for your attention. I'm available for questions if necessary. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hendrik, for this presentation. I think it's very complementary with the previous one. We can understand way better how it works and what's the precise role of national focal point. I don't know if anyone has a question for Hendrik, Maite, or Robin. It's open.
There's a question in the chat, Pierre.
Yes. So, how does an expert provide input to NFP? Are these chosen by the NFP, or can any expert provide input? So I think it's for Hendrik.
Well, if I hope I understood you correctly. There's been a bit of a bad connection here. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Well, mostly an expert can provide information to a national focal point if the national focal point issues a request for input. It doesn't really help a lot if you provide input at any time or at any moment. There is a possibility, of course, I will talk about that a little bit later. There is a possibility to enter your concerns, scientific concerns, in the process, but in most cases, it is most efficient and most effective if you can supply input and review on request by the national focal point. Now, there is a way to add new issues to the agenda of a CBD process, and that is the process of what we call new and emerging issues. Here, the Conference of the Parties will issue a call for scientists to submit files defending the reasons or providing arguments why a new issue, a new upcoming issue, should be added to the agenda of CBD. That is something which is quite rare. It doesn't really happen a lot that is successful. In my experience of the last 10 or so years, many suggestions of new and emerging issues have been added to other agenda items of CBD as sub-items, but not as full-fledged new agenda items. So what you also can do, another possibility is, as a scientist, as a group of experts, there is the possibility to organize side events during SUBSTA and COP meetings, where you as a scientist or a group of experts have the possibility to directly address with your concerns. But again, the most efficient way is to respond to requests that are channeled through the national focal points to the expert community or the stakeholder community. I hope this answers the questions a bit.
Thank you very much, Hendrik. There is another question actually about the link between this process with a national focal point and other process like ATEG. So for an expert, how to deal with these two kind of process.
Yes, well, that is again something which is very much process related. In most cases, when the Conference of the Parties establishes an ATEG, it has the possibility to either or also request the executive secretary and the secretariat to organize commission studies. So that is something in which a expert or an entity responds to a request by the secretariat on an offer to do a study. But in most cases, it can also ask independently of not independently, but at the same time as establishing the ATEG, it can ask the executive secretary to organize a round of consultations by parties, stakeholders, and experts to submit views. The executive secretary will then compile these views in a document, and that document goes then to the ATEG for consideration. Several times, and having been a member of an ATEG in a few cases, this is something that we always considered as one of the main bodies of input for the work of the ATEG. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have also a question maybe for Robin or Hendrik about the link between IPBS and SUBSTA. So for example, as a national focal point on SUBSTA, do you work also with closely with some IPBS expert, or do you go to the IPBS meetings?
I can start to answer because it will be relatively quick. As a focal point myself, I'm not involved in IPBS, but I have close colleagues that are linked, so I have my internal contact. But we can discuss with them, but as far as I know, there's no procedural aspect or formal aspect to have this interaction. But please, Hendrik.
Yes, thank you. If I may, I was in a previous life, I was also an IBES national focal point, and I've been attending most of the IBES meetings. So I have seen a few things. Basically, the IBES process is independent of the CBD process. The IBES process is far more a science rather than the COP and the CBD, which are policy, which is very political and very policy. Now, there is allows SUBSTA to take into consideration exactly what's happening. There is a process for that. It is not yet, but there is a formal process. This are IBES and are not officially linked. It's also not only work in support of the CBD process, it also works in support of other multilateral processes, such as conventional migratory species, as we have seen before, and also UNFCCC and UNFCCC. So, and what we do see is that in particular, in the case where I have been closest, in the invasive alien species assessment, which I negotiated for Belgium, we see that the same experts that I have been contacting to assist in our negotiation process for IPBES, and who have been authors and have been contributing to the IPBES assessment, are also being invited to advise on the CBD and SBSTA documents on this particular issue. So for us, there is some continuity of the whole process between IPBES and CBD, but that depends very much on how the country is organized, is organizing these processes. I hope this helps a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On that, a follow-up question. Someone have a colleague who wants to apply for card for expert on. The question is, can you tell me who should she contact to nominate her?
That's quite simple, if I may. This again, IPBES will issue again a notification that will be sent to the focal points, and those will circulate these invitations normally to the expert communities. Now, if you as an expert wish to be involved in an IPBES assessment, you have to contact your IPBES national focal point. We'll ask you to submit your CV and a short summary expertise. That will be sent to the IPBES Secretariat for further consideration. I'm not going to go into details of that further consideration, but again, I hope this helps.